du projet et ah oui, ah oui, on lance l'enregistrement. Donc c'est ça, Lou, ça fait donc 11 ans qu'on te connaît. On a cheminé ensemble pendant 1 an et demi quand on a fait partie du projet Élan, qui était un projet de centre d'apprentissage libre aussi dans la région, qui n'a finalement pas abouti, mais on a beaucoup cheminé avec des formations en CNV, en sociocratie. Pendant 1 an et demi, on s'est réunis presque chaque semaine en cercle. C'était très enrichissant. Ouais. Et puis quand, il y a toute ton expérience, je te laisserai en parler, mais toute ton expérience en école démocratique qui nous inspirait beaucoup. Puis pour nous, quand on a eu envie de faire naître Champ Libre, c'était une évidence que qu'on se tourne vers toi pour te demander d'être notre conseillère professionnelle et puis que tu fasses partie du conseil. Donc voilà, c'est pour expliquer le lien qu'on a avec Lou, qui est très très précieux pour nous. Et je te laisse la parole, Lou, pour en dire davantage sur toi. Puis en cours de route, si quelqu'un a besoin de traduction, n'hésitez pas à nous faire signe, on sera là.
So thank you. That's touching. Yeah, so I just want to clearly say that I am not a parent. And that does make a difference. But I've been an educator for many years. I taught for about 20 years. I was looking at alternative ways of teaching children right from the beginning. I didn't like what I was seeing in the classrooms. And so I was very questioning. And I went and lived on a farm that was an intentional community. Right when I finished teachers college, when I received my paper that called me a teacher, I went there to teach the children who were there. And I ended up homeschooling 2 girls, both 12 years old, turning 13 years old. And they were not my children, but I was homeschooling them there in the community. And I learned a lot doing that. And then I went into a more traditional teaching because I needed a job. And then I did a master's degree in educational technology. And I really spent like a year looking at how do children learn in classrooms? Why did we choose that way of teaching children? What other ways have been developed? And then I developed my own circle of equals that learn together. And that was my master's thesis. And then later I was the co-director at a school in Pennsylvania that used the same ways of learning and being in love with life that Champ Libre uses. And then I was at the Peace School in Fulford, which did the same thing, almost the same thing. So there are a lot of experiences that I've had, as well as working with Elan, learning what people really want for their children through Elan. So yeah, that's my experience. It's been many, many decades, and hopefully I have something to offer you today.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So my task today was to speak to parents who are new to this, who perhaps have questions about this and don't know perhaps how best they can be with their child in this endeavor, in this new way of learning. And I like to call it a space because that's just an easier way to name it. So let's talk about the space of independent learning. And the first thing that I want to invite you to think about and to keep in your heart and in your mind when you're going down the weeks and months of this is to think about what is the goal of this independent learning as we look at it long term, as we look at it for the child going forward. What is the goal? And for me as a teacher, I was taught that we give the goal in terms of what the child is going to do, what the learner is going to do. So when I envision this child, and I've seen children, as they get older in this process, I've seen how they go. And what we're looking for, what the goal is, a child who is capable and confident as a lifelong learner, who is going through the process of always growing and learning through their lifetime with that confidence, with that capability. And they are able to self-evaluate. They are able to self-direct because they have the courage and the honesty with themselves, and they know that it's safe to self-evaluate. So it's a process of getting to that point. And that's not what the traditional classroom is going to be teaching the child, because it's just not set up for that. So what the traditional classroom is teaching the child is that, I'm passive as a learner, and somebody is giving me the information, and that person is going to tell me when I've learned it well, when I've done well. They're going to tell me what I should do next. They're going to tell me when I've done wrong, why I did wrong, and all these things. They're going to tell me. I'm giving, they're taking that control. They're taking that voice. And what else did I want to say about that? Yeah, they're controlling your time, your interests, your behavior, your learning. And so this model, this way of learning, if your child has been in a traditional classroom for a few years, they have to sort of unlearn that message. They have to come out of that and feel safe and feel like, okay, I understand what this is. Because depending on how long they've been in a classroom, they've been, and it's not spoken, it's not in a book, but it's given every single day. It's given to them. And so they need that time. So what you might see in the first months and even a full year of a child being out of that traditional classroom and into an independent space is they're just trying to figure that out, and they're just learning. And I can give you an example from my experience, but if you really need it, I'll give it to you. And so this is really big. This goal, lifelong, confident, capable learning, knowing how to self-evaluate. This is big. This is the rest of the life of this person, becoming self-actualized, becoming self-aware as a growing person for the rest of their life. So it's big. So let's just take a breath on that. Whew. So what I want to do then is I want to give you 3 main directions that you can keep within you as you move forward that might help you to help your child do this. Now, if your child came into this environment of Champ Libre from 5 years old, from being at home playing, then it's not going to be quite the same. But even that child is still learning how to be a self-directed, independent learner. So a lot of it is there. It's just the child who's been in a classroom has to have that work of undoing what was learned from the subtext, the context of where they were. Okay, so 3 directions. So the first direction is that we learn by watching the people around us. We learn through what we see and feel from the people around us. So you as the parent, if you set your goal for yourself that you are going to show your child the behaviors and the attitudes that you would like your child to show you. So you're going to show your child open-mindedness, curiosity, the courage to try new things, the courage to make a mistake and just say, oh, look, I made a mistake. What can I learn from this? All of these behaviors and attitudes of independence of thought and being able to learn from what happens to us and being open to what happens to us. This is gold for this child because they're picking it up and they're realizing, yeah, I can do that too. One of the most powerful teaching moments for me when I was in a traditional classroom, I was always trying to subvert, go underneath what we were supposed to be giving these kids in terms of control. And one of the things that happened was a child asked me a question and I didn't know the answer. And I said, I don't know. And the child was so surprised. What do you mean you don't know? And so it was a moment of opening to a possibility that the adult cannot know. Say, I don't know, but I know how to find out. I know how to find the answer. Or I can show you how to find the answer because it's your question. So let me check my notes. So there's the idea of doing projects. Like, do you do projects? Because for me, a project is a specific undertaking where you're learning as you go. For me, a project is always has that element in it of I'm trying this out to see how it works. And there's always in a project that moment of evaluation. How did I do with this? I'm a gardener. I mean, anyone who's a gardener knows that if you plant something, it may or may not do well. And you're learning as you go. This works well here, this doesn't. So it's this ongoing evaluation. So doing projects in front of your children or your child, openly verbalizing what you're doing, why you're doing it that way. Oh, I want to try it here. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Just these sorts of verbalizations, these sorts of things that we say out loud, they help the child. They give the child an example of what it means to be a lifelong learner. Being creative in whatever ways you're creative. Reading aloud because you love what you just read. You say, I've got to share this with you. It sounds so beautiful. So you read it out loud. Maybe not to your child, maybe to your partner, to your friend. Reading poetry out loud. If you're planning a trip, showing the child how you plan the trip, all these sorts of things, being active, thinking, feeling, showing the child how you do that. I could go on. I don't want to go on too long. Asking questions of yourself, openly seeking to acquire new skills, identifying life skills that you've never actually mastered and maybe you'd like to master them. Like if you've never baked or you've never done sewing or knitting or whatever life skill you identify. This encourages your child to do the same. Also, of course, you already probably do this, but frequently asking your child, do you want to join me, help me, do this with me? watch me, whatever it is, you know? So show your child how you would like your child to be in the world. The other thing I want to say about that is just to reflect on your feeling and relationship with things like numbers, math, language, grammar, um, algebra, fractions, things like that. Just reflect on how you feel about those things. Some people love numbers, they love math, some people don't. So it's just being aware, because the child is going to pick that up from you. And if you've always had a phobia, like, I was good in school except for math, I've heard that many times. So just to be aware of those sorts of things. Learning a second language, using a grammar or a dictionary or a thesaurus. Do you do that in your life? Do you have it open? I always have my dictionary open as a reminder to me that if there's a word I'm not sure about, I can look it up. It's a big, big old dictionary that my father gave me many, many years ago, and I love it. And yeah, I met a woman from France when I was much younger, and I spent time at her home. And we would sit around this huge kitchen table eating delicious food for hours and talking. And somebody said something, and she said, "Oh, I think you've said that incorrectly in French." And the person disputed it. And she went off and got her Bechamel and looked it up. And I was so amazed, because in the Anglophone community, I'd never, ever seen anybody do that. But I was inspired. If you love your language, she would look up words in her dictionary. She would look up verb conjugations in her Bechamel. And so she was able to continue learning, even though she was long out of school. So just things like that. Oh, yeah. When I was in teachers college a long, long time ago, we did have a guest speaker at one moment, and this woman seemed very wise to me. And I remembered what she said all these years later, because it really spoke to me. And I want to share it with you. She said, "It's not what you know, it's who you are." So it's not that you're an expert in education or you're an expert in reading or anything like that. It's who you are. It's your behaviors, your attitudes, your heart. That's what the child is going to really learn from. So it's for you to do that inner work. And the exciting thing about it is that having your child be on the path of independent learning, it invites you on that same path. It invites you to look at some of these behaviors and say, am I doing that in my life? Do I want to do more of that? And so it opens that up for you. So that's the first one, is to show your child the behaviors that you would like your child to show you. So the second is we learn by doing. So how much are you doing for your child, and how much is your child doing on her own or his own? And this can be anything from choosing the book, making the meal, organizing the child's room, choosing, the order in which we're going to do things today. Just anything that you think the child could do. Just always ask yourself, could the child be doing this? Is this something I have to do, or could the child be doing this? For example, instead of reading to your child, could your child read to you? You could ask your child, "Oh, I really like that story. Would you read it to me?" Instead of you always being the one who reads it. Instead of researching for your child, maybe your child could do the research. You might have to show them how. but maybe they can do the research. This only works if the child is old enough and has the skill, but you can build it slowly over time. So the goal is to have the child do everything for herself or himself, and you do very, very little. You're just support. You're the background. The child is doing as much as possible for himself or for herself. Whenever you find yourself doing for your child, just ask yourself, could the child be doing this? And the problem there is that the first time or the third or fourth or fifth time that the child does something for himself or for herself, it might be that it takes 3 times as long. It might be that it makes a mess. It might be that from your perspective, they're doing it completely in the wrong way. But that's the challenge for you. The problem for you is that you have to keep your hands off and not say anything and just let them do it and learn from their mistakes and learn as they're doing it. So, yeah. Can the child do it? Can the child do part of it? Can the child do all of it? So that's the second one. And the third one is we learn by being self-aware. We learn by being able to hear our own inner voice. We learn by learning about ourselves. And so how can you possibly help your child to become more self-aware? And so what I've found in the years of my doing this is that if you ask your child open questions, they have to be open questions like, what are you doing? Or how was your day today? Like, what did you do today? How did you do this? Why did you do this? And you really, really listen to the answer. You really, really want to know. In your heart, you want to know what your child did, why they did it, how they did it. And you take the time to really listen. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes. You're inviting your child to think about what they did and verbalize what they did, which means they have to put it into logical sentences and so forth. And in this way, your child is learning greater self-awareness, that your child is practicing greater self-awareness. This is something I don't see many of us doing, even as adults. I don't see us really listening to someone talk about what they did and why they did it. And we could. If we get into the habit, if you get into the habit of every day asking your child 1 or 2 open-ended questions like that and really listening to the answer, at first you might get, I don't know, what did you do today? I don't know, I was playing. No, I really want to know, what did you do today? Well, I was playing outside. So what were you doing outside? And it's not like you're it's not an inquisition. You're not trying to find fault. There's no judgment whatsoever. It's you just really want to know. You really want to have an insight into that experience. I think over time, what you'll find is that the answers get more complete, they get more complex, they get deeper. It's a wonderful dialogue. It's an ongoing dialogue, and eventually, your child maybe starts having that dialogue with herself or himself. It's really central to this work of becoming an independent learner, that the child is the one who sets their goals and then determines whether they've met their goal or they have not met their goal, and what they're going to do to meet it, or what they're going to do now that they've done what they said they wanted to do. What are they going to do next? And to get there, they need, they need to be able to understand and think about clearly the process. And talking to someone about it is the best way to gain clarity. You've had those conversations where you said to someone, wow, it's only now that I'm speaking to you about it that I realized blah, 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 right? Because it's when we're asked to verbalize it that we get clear in our own head. So, listen to your child. It's really important that there's no judgment around it. It's just, I really want to know. And there's a love there, obviously you love your child. This is a wonderful way to show it, is just to ask these open questions and really listen. So I highly recommend that. And then the only other thing I'll say there is always begin where the child is. We always begin where the learner is. So if your child right now is completely involved in climbing that tree every day, that's what they want to do. They climb that tree and they sit in the tree, or whatever it is your child is doing, whatever seems to be taking up all their time. That's where you begin. That's where you start. And you say, so how was it today climbing that tree? What happened when you were climbing the tree? How did you feel? Whatever questions come to you, and you move on from there. And they'll move on from there. So that's it for me. If there are any questions, I'd love to try to answer them.
Thank you, Lou.
Oui, merci. Thank you so much for your input. Avez-vous des questions, Dominique, Marc-André? Je sais qu'il y a plusieurs parents qui profitent du fait que ce soit enregistré pour le regarder en différé. Donc, il n'y aura pas autant de questions que ce qu'on aurait pu imaginer. Mais allez-y, Dominique, Marc-André, Julie, si vous avez des questions.
Non,
m'entends-tu?
Oui, on t'entend.
Bon. Ben, pour moi, ça va, là. Ça répondait pas mal à mes questions. Puis,
OK.
c'est ça. En cours de route, on va voir aussi ce qui va nous arriver. C'est ça.
OK. Et toi, Dominique?
Oh,
on t'entend pas.
Ah, voilà. C'est bon?
Ouais.
Oui.
J'ai trouvé ça super intéressant. Merci beaucoup. Vraiment, c'est un nouveau monde qui s'ouvre à nous, mais ça résonne tellement dans moi. J'ai-tu des questions? J'ai pris des notes. Je suis heureuse que ce soit enregistré pour que Renaud puisse le regarder à son retour. J'ai pas de questions pour l'instant. Peut-être si je peux, mon anglais est peut-être 75%, là. Si je peux peut-être réviser les 3 points qu'elle a nommés. Le premier étant d'apprendre, de laisser l'enfant apprendre surtout en observant, dans le fond, d'être ce que l'on veut que l'enfant devienne, incarner ce que l'on veut que l'enfant devienne. Je pense que ça, c'est le premier point. Tout à fait. J'ai beaucoup aimé l'exemple de laisser le dictionnaire ouvert aussi, le Becherel, et de juste laisser ça en place. En tout cas, ça m'a beaucoup inspirée. Le deuxième, Learn by Doing, en fait, d'encourager l'enfant à tenter des choses, de laisser l'espace à l'enfant d'essayer, de ne pas faire les recherches à sa place ou de finalement, le plus possible, apprendre à l'enfant par l'exemple, encore une fois. Est-ce que j'ai bien compris le deuxième point? Oui, OK.
I would just add that if the child seems stuck, like serré, is that a word? Like they can't go forward because it's too hard.
Okay.
Then of course you would help, you know.
Encourager.
Yeah.
Encourager.
Well, or even, you know, even do a little bit with them or for them to get them going again. You don't want them to feel like it's too hard, like they can't do it. That would not be a good thing.
Ah ouais.
You know what I mean? So it's a balance, but you'll find, you know your child. If they're just saying, oh, it's hard, or if they really are stuck, they're really stopped, you know, you'll know the difference.
Oui,
Yeah.
OK. Merci. Et le troisième que vous avez parlé, c'est par rapport surtout au dialogue, encourager l'enfant à expliquer, parce qu'effectivement, c'est vrai que c'est difficile des fois de les amener à raconter leur journée ou j'ai trouvé que c'était bien de vraiment l'encourager, peut-être pas insister, mais de vraiment, avec le cœur, l'amener à dialoguer, poser des questions ouvertes. Et puis que tout ça, avec le temps, allait devenir un apprentissage à dialoguer et que verbaliser les choses allait l'aider à clarifier un peu ce qu'il avait vécu. Je trouve ça super intéressant.
Great.
Ouais.
C'est quel âge ton enfant?
6 ans et 10 ans.
OK.
Donc, j'ai aimé aussi ce qu'on a parlé au début parce que mon plus grand, qui est en 4e année, qui a été scolarisé pendant un bout de temps, va avoir un processus de désapprentissage à faire, plus que ma mini qui a juste fait la maternelle. Alors, ça va être intéressant aussi d'observer cela et de l'encourager à ça. Je sens qu'il est bien prêt, mais oui, ça va être 2 expériences différentes, je crois. Il y en a un qui va devoir désapprendre un peu le modèle conventionnel.
Yeah.
Ouais.
Yeah. It's an unlearning process.
Oui,
Yeah.
oui.
Yeah. So I worked with a girl who was, like I said, she was 12 years old and she was terrified of math. She had convinced herself that she was really bad at it and she wasn't smart and she couldn't do it. And I was very gentle with her, but I was teaching her. I was her teacher. And we were living in that community that I spoke of, this intentional, like an eco village. And I made her a math test. And I was so gentle. It doesn't matter if you don't do well, it's okay. And she ripped it, she tore it into little pieces, but it wasn't just like 6 pieces. It was like 25 pieces, like little pieces. She was so afraid. And I said, I can't teach you if you're going to destroy what I give you. It was an attack. She came into my room when I wasn't there and she tore it up and threw it on the floor. So she had to go through this very intense process of with herself. I said, you can teach yourself or you can have me teach you, or you can not do it at all. There's always that possibility. But you can't if I'm going to teach you, you have to promise me that you'll never, you know, come into my room and rip something up like that again. And I waited and I waited and I waited. I waited about 6 weeks, well, maybe 5 weeks. It seemed like a long time that I waited. And time was passing, and she came finally to me and she said, I will teach myself.
Wow.
And I showed her the book. It was a great book. It was one of those math books where they show you what to do and then they give you an example, and then they get harder and harder as you do the page. And then in the back, they have the answers to, I think it was like every second question, they had the answer. So you could check whether you were doing it correctly or not. So I showed her all of those things. It took about, I don't know, 40 minutes, an hour. And then I just let her do it. And in 2.5 months, 3 months, she did the whole book by herself. And when she finished, she was like a different person. She wasn't afraid. She was confident. I mean, it moved me to tears. You know, she had come in so broken. She had come in so frightened and not believing in herself. And yeah, so sometimes you have to just sit and wait for them to decide, you know, that they're going to do it this way or whatever. Give them clear choices, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you had a question, Anne, about bored kids.
Oui, je voulais, c'est ça, poser les questions qu'on entend de temps en temps de certains parents, ou plutôt des doutes qu'ils peuvent avoir. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec un enfant qui s'ennuie?
Or when we hear the proverbial phrase, I'm bored.
Mais après, on pourra dire comment nous, on aborde ça, comment on accompagne ça, mais j'avais envie, Lou, de t'entendre là-dessus.
So I'm bored. I will just say that depending on the age of the child as well, if it was a slightly older child approaching adolescence, I would, if they said it a lot, I would be looking for other signs that perhaps they are not happy in their situation. There is that possibility. There could be a problem with friendships or low self-esteem. I mean, there could be these sorts of problems that I would be looking for. But if I didn't see them, then I know they're just bored. In a younger child, I would just say, okay, you're bored. I wouldn't be too worried about these other things. And so the child is learning in that moment that unless they engage with the world is not going to be very engaging. And so it's up to them. They create the world that they're going to experience, right? So, yeah, well, you're bored. I guess you should do something about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Moi, ça me fait pas peur, un enfant qui s'ennuie. J'observe pas des enfants qui viennent régulièrement dire je m'ennuie, donc il pourrait y avoir un déséquilibre caché derrière, comme tu l'évoques. Mais quand ça arrive une fois de temps en temps, je renvoie un miroir. Ah ok, tu t'ennuies. J'accueille, il n'y a pas de jugement. Et l'ennui disparaît très vite parce qu'ils rebondissent très vite sur autre chose et pouf, il se crée quelque chose et ça y est, ça disparaît. Donc je pense que quand l'enfant il est accueilli dans cette émotion, il ne sait pas trop quoi faire avec ça, l'adulte en face il est clair, il n'a pas peur de ça, c'est comme il en sort très vite. Moi c'est ce que je vois. Ouais.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be afraid of it at all either. I just in the age of adolescence, I would just wonder if there's maybe more there, if they're saying it a lot,
Ouais.
a lot.
Ouais.
But yeah, they have to learn just to change the channel if they're bored, just go do something else.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they have to learn that the world is going to be as interesting to them as they are interested in the world. It's that simple.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and we're not here to entertain them or, you know, really
No,
not.
never.
I like what you said, Lou, about like those open-ended, when you're talking about open-ended questions. It got me thinking because I read something in John Holt's book, How Children Fail, that in the classroom, they rarely get to express themselves, the children. And when I read that, it got me thinking to Champ Libre, how it's sort of the opposite, how they're just sitting around the table and all they're doing is expressing themselves.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, well, when I said that we don't, as adults, we don't often do it either. Like when someone says, how are you doing? Or what have you been doing lately? They don't expect 10 minutes of you telling them what you've been doing lately. They just expect, oh, you know, this and that. Like, I love to really take the time to express, well, what have I been doing lately? And how has it felt? And blah, 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 you know? So again, what we're offering the child, maybe we can offer it to our spouse, to our partner, to our friend. You know, it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah. L'autre question qui revient, la plus fréquente, c'est comment les enfants apprennent au niveau académique quand ils sont... tu en as parlé un peu, mais peut-être qu'on pourrait approfondir. Et j'avais envie de donner un exemple. Tu sais, quand tu dis que les enfants apprennent en faisant.
By doing.
By doing. Tu sais que l'adulte, idéalement, est là pour soutenir, mais ne va pas au-devant, ne fait pas les choses à la place de l'enfant le plus possible, selon l'âge qu'il a. L'exemple qui me venait en tête, c'est quand un enfant me demande comment épeler un mot, comment écrire un mot, je ne donne jamais la réponse. Par contre, je les invite à écouter ce qu'ils entendent en disant le mot. Et je dirais que 9 fois sur 10, ils sont capables de trouver les lettres, peut-être à une lettre près. Là, je vais les aider à ce moment-là. Et là, ils apprennent à faire confiance à ce qu'ils entendent. En fait. Et c'est fantastique. Là, ils ont les yeux qui s'allument. C'est comme, waouh, j'ai trouvé ça tout seul. Je donne jamais la réponse.
Yeah, that's awesome. It also makes them a better reader because reading is that same process, just in the other direction. Yeah. Hearing the sounds and saying the sounds. And yeah, that's awesome. You know, your child wants to go to on a day trip somewhere that their friend talked about. Oh, there's this amazing place with a waterfall and blah, blah, blah. And I want to go. Mommy, can we go? And so then you say, well, you plan it out. How do we get there? Do we eat lunch there? Where can we eat lunch? Is there a picnic table? Is there, you know, you plan it out. You ask your friend the questions, you figure it out and come back to me with a plan, and then we'll see if it works, you know, instead of you planning it all out. It's just little things like that. So for the question about academics, I'm going to say that the 3, you know, key areas of academic work are reading, writing, and numbers. And the more your child is engaging with those just through what they're doing in life, the more they're going to be capable of meeting those academic goals that the government has said we should have. And indeed, we should be able to read and so on. I think we're all agreed on that. the order of it, I think, if you begin with listening to stories and then you learn to read stories and then you learn, usually people want to write stories. And I know that Anne does the child says the story and you write it. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great first step. And then eventually they want to. As far as writing goes, it's a really good idea to do a lot with crayons and colored pencils because you want that fine motor skill. You want them to be really good at holding a pen or a pencil. And so they get that from coloring. If you buy them coloring books and crayons and you get them drawing and coloring, they get really good at it. And then when they do want to print or write, they can because they have that motor skill. It's literally muscles in your hand that you need to build up. And as far as things like history, geography, what do you remember that you learned in school? It's not much. Not much. We get that from traveling with our child, talking to our child about where we're going. It's fun to do like a map of where we live and how we get around from place to place, or if we like to go hiking, maps of hiking and things like that. But ultimately, if they're interested, if your child is really interested, for example, in insects or something, they're going to learn all kinds of things about insects that a school science class wouldn't teach them because their interest goes deeper. But they're maybe not going to learn about the rivers of Quebec. But honestly, do they need to know about the rivers of Quebec? So I don't know. You have to decide for yourselves what that means to you. And of course, there's the whole question of your relationship to the Ministère de l'Éducation. So that you told me not to really talk too much about that. So yeah, that's another question. Yeah, I don't know if you want to go there.
Do you want to?
If Marc-André or Dominique are interested, we can touch on it. But
si vous avez des questions, ouais, par rapport à ça. Mais... Moi, ce que je peux dire
par rapport à l'académie.
Oui, non, vas-y.
Oui, vas-y.
Non, je t'en prie, Dominique.
Non, je trouve ça super intéressant parce que je me questionne justement par rapport à Livia, à quel niveau je vais compléter son éducation académique, puisqu'elle commence la première année. Normalement, elle devrait commencer des matières académiques. Alors, pour moi, c'est justement des réflexions en ce moment-là, à quel point je vais suivre le programme ou si je vais tenter vraiment une nouvelle expérience différente, d'y aller librement avec juste des inspirations, des exemples, des sorties, lui proposer beaucoup de choses, mais vraiment la laisser décider. Là, je pense que nous allons pencher vers quelque chose de vraiment très libre et c'est nouveau pour nous, mais ça m'interpelle beaucoup de la laisser décider de son rythme, puis d'observer, voir ce que ça va donner. Ouais.
She's going to see her older sibling reading. She's going to see children at Champ Libre reading because they do. And she's going to perhaps see you reading. And she's going to want to read because people want to be able to do the things that they see others doing. If she sees you, cooking, using recipes, looking things up online, all these things she's going to want to do. And this is the joy of it. We don't have to pull them. They want to go there. And yeah, that's it really.
Ouais. Effectivement, je pense que si elle est entourée de modèles inspirants, elle va avoir envie d'apprendre à son rythme, mais c'est sûr que ça va lui donner le goût d'apprendre. Ouais.
And when the child wants to learn something, they learn it so much more quickly than if they are being pulled by some, somebody outside of them saying, you have to do this now. Yeah, you're spending most of your energy and time pushing them and pulling them to do it, rather than when they're ready, boom. Like that girl with her math, in 3 months she did 7-8 months of work.
Ouais.
Yeah.
Ouais.
And it doesn't only have to be in school. There are homeschooled families that impose classes on their kids, and so that can also work to the detriment.
C'est la même chose, oui.
Ouais, vraiment. Puis, on sait maintenant que le cerveau humain, il est vraiment câblé, en fait, pour faire des liens avec le monde qui est autour de lui. Et les neurosciences prouvent aussi qu'il y a juste 2 conditions qui sont nécessaires pour que l'apprentissage opère. C'est qu'il y ait un intérêt pour la personne qui apprend et une absence de stress. C'est ces 2 conditions uniques qui doivent être réunies pour que l'apprentissage se mette en place. Donc, on n'a vraiment pas intérêt à mettre de la pression, à aller au-devant quand ils ne sont pas prêts, quand ils ne sont pas intéressés. Ça peut bloquer vraiment, ça peut les dégoûter, alors que c'est comme récolter un fruit mûr. Quand l'enfant il est prêt à lire, à écrire, à s'amuser avec les chiffres, ça sort tout seul, ça se met en place. C'est comme marcher, comme parler, c'est le même processus.
At a certain level, if you're working with you're obviously living in a society, you're interacting with the ministère de l'Éducation. So at a certain time, at a certain level, you might be having that conversation with your child where, this is the expectation that you will be able to do all the different things in this math book or in this science book. And so how would you like to approach that? And you're still giving the child agency and choice and direction, but you're explaining to them, we live in this context where there are these requirements being asked of us as your parents and as you as the learner. So how do you want to approach this? I don't know. It's controversial. I used that approach when I was teaching with children who were really struggling with the system that they were in. I would ask them, how do you want to navigate? How do you want to work your way through this problem that you don't want to do what they want you to do? Because then you're giving them at least a little bit of control. Because let's face it, there are things in our society that we agree to live by those things, and we don't have control over that. We negotiate with the society, and they have to learn that also. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I would really say about working with the Ministry of Education is bringing the child fully on board. By the age of 10 or 11, certainly by the age of 12, I would say, they can do that. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about that, Lawrence.
No,
oui,
that's good.
Oui, ça résonne. Yeah. Mais en même temps, ce que je me dis, c'est que c'est vrai que le règlement qui entoure l'éducation en famille s'est resserré dans les 2 dernières années. Mais à chaque fois qu'on parle à notre personne ressource là, du ministère, quand il nous pose des questions comme alors c'est quoi les forces et les faiblesses de Lou, et qu'on lui explique que nous, on ne raisonne pas comme ça, qu'on ne parle pas en termes de force ou de faiblesse, on s'intéresse aux intérêts qui sont présents, puis on les nourrit. Le reste, on verra plus tard si ça l'intéresse, quand ce sera mûr pour lui. Qu'on n'est pas dans une dynamique de rendement, d'évaluation, et puis que, je veux dire, à chaque fois qu'on parle de ça ensemble, il ressort de la conversation nourrie, inspirée, Parce qu'on ne se colle pas au programme. Par exemple, il nous disait, bon, en univers social, est-ce que vous avez vu, est-ce que vous avez comparé la société des Mayas avec celle des Iroquois? On était comme, non, on n'a pas fait ça parce que ça ne l'intéresse pas. Par contre, on a beaucoup parlé des Inuits parce qu'on avait rencontré des membres d'une communauté Inuit, puis on a parlé de l'impact de la colonisation sur les Inuits, comment ils le vivent encore aujourd'hui, etc. Et puis, he was like blown away. He was like, oh, mais vous n'avez pas besoin de rentrer dans la politique non plus. Oui, mais ça l'intéresse, la politique, dans cette dimension-là. Donc, nous, on a un devoir, je pense, d'éducation aussi, auprès du ministère de l'Éducation, pour leur dire, nous, c'est comme ça qu'on vit. On n'a rien à se reprocher, on fait ce qui fait du sens pour nous et notre fils, il va bien, il est épanoui. C'est à nous de montrer aussi que ça fait du sens ce qu'on fait là. Ouais.
Awesome.
Allô, Olivia.
Ah ben c'est intéressant de vous entendre, de voir comment vous dialoguez avec la personne ressource et voir leur ouverture. C'est intéressant. Nous, on est justement en processus de fin d'année, là, et puis là, c'est notre premier portfolio. C'est la méthode d'évaluation que nous avons choisie. Je trouve ça intéressant parce que, justement, c'est Oui. Attends, ça fait trop de bruit. Je parle. Pas plus loin. C'est ça, en fait, c'est que dans le fond, ça évite de faire une évaluation à l'enfant. Puis la charge revient aux parents, de présenter quelque chose, qu'on peut tourner ça un peu de la façon qu'on veut, mais je trouve qu'au moins, je trouve ça bien qu'on ait cette option-là qui évite une évaluation formelle à nos enfants, parce que c'est l'opposé de cette vision-là, finalement. Donc, voilà.
Ouais, comme ça, la pression, elle est sur les parents et pas sur
l'enfant. C'est ça, voilà.
On peut apprendre aussi à parler le langage du ministère de l'Éducation et à aller dans leur sens, à leur dire ce qu'ils veulent entendre, puis à jouer avec ça. Parce que eux, finalement, ils ont aussi des petites cases à remplir. Ils ont un salaire à justifier. Donc, on peut les aider là-dedans à simplifier leur travail, puis continuer à vivre comme nous, on souhaite vivre. Donc, c'est ça.
Intéressant. Merci.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did some work in Pennsylvania. You can, as an educator, you can become the one that is evaluating the portfolios of the homeschooled children. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that briefly for a time. And it was amazing what they would bring in. And like one family, they traveled for the whole year. And they just brought in so many photographs, and the child had done a journal of her travels and all. So, as Anne was saying, if you want to help them check off those boxes, every time you have a conversation with your child, that's language arts, that's francisation or whatever you want to call it. Every time your child has read a story or reads you a story or whatever, that's reading. And so you just build it up from there. Every time she helps you with some cooking in the kitchen, that's math. Because so much of this and so much of that, and so on and so on. You learn how to check the boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate with our interviews with the DEM, like Anne said, they come at you with a certain language, and most parents won't know how to deal with that. They'll get sucked right into that. Oh no, and Anne, thankfully, she turns it around and she's like, no, that's not our model. We don't believe in that. So she puts it right in their face, and so I'm thankful for that. And it's like you said, I mean, in school, especially in university, what do we learn? We learn how to sort of BS our way through papers and all kinds of stuff. And so that's sort of what we're doing with the DEM is, you know, we're giving them what they want to hear.
Yeah. You know, art, that's easy. Physical education, that's easy.
Oh, it's not in the program for homeschoolers.
Okay,
Can you believe it? The suppressed arts.
Social studies, how about social studies?
It's like, yeah, univers social. This is how.
Yeah, that's easy. That's super easy. You can do that. The hardest ones are probably like reading and math, and they're not that hard. You can find a way.
Oh no, that's easy. Yeah, it's well, depending on the child. I mean,
yeah, depending on the age of the child and so on.
Because yeah, at the end, the only thing you need to prove is that there's that the child is evolving in his learning. Okay, so that's easy. Nobody's failing a year at homeschooling. It's impossible. Okay. Faut juste prouver qu'il y a évolution. Donc ça, bah oui, forcément, il y a évolution entre le début et la fin de l'année scolaire. Oui, oui.
So are there any other questions?
I think I'm good.
Bon, mais Marc-André?
No, I'm good too. So
great. Well, okay, then if there's nothing else, we'll wrap it up. Merci à tous d'être là avec nous. And thank you, Lou. Grand merci à Lou.
Ouais, thank you so much, Lou. I'm super grateful.
ouais, c'est intéressant, merci.
Ouais, interesting and deep and inspiring as usual.
Ouais.
It's my pleasure. I wish you all joy in your learning journeys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merci. Great. So we wish everyone a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
Oui. Merci.
Merci tout le monde. À bientôt.
Bye.
Merci.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Marc-André. You too.
You too.